Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of the newspaper analysis from the civil service examinations perspective. So today we are going to discuss the Hindu Daily edition dated 26th September 2023. The important topics which are to be discussed have been displayed on the screen, and the timestamping of the same has been provided in the description box below. So now let us begin our today's session. This topic has appeared at page number 12 in today's The Hindu Daily edition, and the topic is in relation to the Joshimath disaster, the sinking of the Himalayan town that is Joshimath. So you must all be aware about this particular fact that recently India faced the crisis in the city of Joshimath in the state of Uttarakhand. Right? So the city, that town basically sunk. There were various reasons for this, and this is the immediate context of this very news article that recently several institutions have conducted independent investigations to uncover the reasons contributed to the land subsidence in the Joshimath. So there were several findings because of which this tragedy unfolded, and therefore we will be in today's session discussing this particular aspect, that what are various factors responsible for the land subsidence in Joshimath. As far as the UPSC scheme of syllabus is concerned, this topic is particularly relevant in General Studies Mains Paper 3 in the section of disaster management. So in this line, let us look at some of the factors responsible for this tragedy. As far as this particular issue is concerned, the factors responsible can be divided into two components, that is the natural as well as the human-made or the anthropogenic factors. Right? So let us deal with these factors. Let us understand these factors one by one. So first is the vulnerable foundation. Actually, the thing is that the Joshimath town was built on the sediments of lava, which was the result of a volcanic eruption in this particular region centuries back. So above those sediments of this lava, this town was built upon. But these sediments are very soft, so they do not have very hard rock based structure on which this town is built. Hence, this foundation on which this whole town is built is very vulnerable, which is very much prone to shaking. The second important factor is the intermediary location. So where is Joshimath town located? To understand this point, let us draw an analogy. Suppose we are in plains. Right, so this is the area of plains. Over it we have the mountains, and on the top of these mountains we have the glacial areas. Right, here we are having the plain areas. Correct. So in these glacial areas, what do we have? We have the presence of permanent glaciers. In the plains, what do we have? We have the rainfall, which contribute to the flow of water in these plains, right? But then there is an intermediary location. In this intermediary location, we have a transition zone. So that means this particular zone experiences glacier activities in winters, rainfall activities in summers. So that means this particular region is prone to glacial impacts, they are prone to precipitation impacts, as well as they are prone to the melting. So that is why the towns and the cities which are located in the intermediate location of such zones are particularly vulnerable to both the types of disasters. That is why whenever you will analyze the cities like Joshimath as well as the other important Himalayan towns, for example Shimla, Dalhousie, Mussoorie, etc., they face so much of disasters because they are neither on the topmost point of the mountains nor at the bottom point. They are somewhat located in the transition zone, experiencing both the types of disasters. Right? The third important point again is attributed to the location, that is the sloping angle and the direction. So the Joshimath town particularly has the northeasterly sloping. Now what do we understand by this? So here I require your imagination. So just imagine. First point is that suppose this is the Himalayas, this is the mountain, right? So the mountain which is facing towards India, that face we call it the southward facing part, and towards the Tibet is the northward facing part. So the apparent movement of the sun is from south and not from the north. That is the reason that on the southern slopes of the Himalayas, that is towards India, you find vegetation. As soon as you go towards the northern slopes, that is Tibetan part, it is a complete bare land. Understood? So that means that those regions which are having the slopes towards south, that is from north to south, will be having the sun, will be having certain stability also. On the contrary, the northeasterly sloping, what do we mean by it? It is basically the slope from north to east, not towards the south. Yeah, so let us visualize it. Suppose these two hands represent the two slopes of the Himalayas. Okay, so this is the cross section. Now let me rotate this thing. So the hand which is facing towards you, that is this one part. This is the southern slope of Himalayas, and the hand which is at the back towards the wall, which is not facing this hand, is basically the northern slope. Right? So what do we understand by this? That this one is the Tibetan part, and this one is the part of Himalayas south, that is towards India. Correct? What is the apparent movement of the sun? The sun moves in such a direction. Correct? So this is the face, southern face, and the sun is moving like this. Hence we have the vegetation over the southern part of the Himalayas. Understood? Now where is the Joshimath town located? Joshimath is having a slope northeasterly. What do we understand by this slope is, now again imagine it, I am rotating it, this is the southern slope. Okay, so if you are seeing it in a cross-sectional viewpoint, so Joshimath is somewhere between this, right? So this was the southern slope and Joshimath is between my two hands. So the sun is moving here, it is heating up the southern slope of the Himalayas, but that heat is not very well distributed in the middle portion, which is hidden. Na? So this is where the Joshimath town is located. Okay, so if I have to try, now this black pen, right, this is the Joshimath having a northeasterly slope, that is from north towards east. So this is the slope, and this is the southward slope of the Himalayas. I hope you understood by this, right? Let us imagine this is north, this is south, and this is the intermediary part. The slope is somewhat like this. So the movement of sun is from the south, and these rays are not percolating to this particular area, because of which whenever there is a precipitation or the rainfall in this particular region, it freezes because lesser intensity sun rays are available over there. Hence, it has a lower temperature, more intense cooling activity. So that is why the precipitation which occurs over this region, it freezes, right? But as soon as there is seasonal change, because we have discussed it is in the intermediary location, so during some seasons, for example in June, in May, it melts. So that is why this melting further make the vulnerable foundation more vulnerable, because there is a melting, the soft sediments, they just flow away, increasing the gaps between the soil particles. The next reason is the disaster vulnerability. Now we all know that this region is particularly vulnerable to various types of disasters, for example cloudbursts, landslides, glacial lake outburst, floods, etc. and also high intensity earthquake. This region, this town falls in high intensity seismic zones, right? So these are certain natural factors which ultimately actually has shaken the vulnerable foundation on which this town was located, and therefore this town basically has sunk. But anthropogenic factors are also equally responsible, because we have created a huge amount of infrastructure in terms of dams, roads, hotels, etc. So this infrastructure increases the superincumbent load on the foundation of these towns. The haphazard constructions which do not follow the building bylaws, building codes, further increase the vulnerability of such regions. And also poor drainage lines do not allow the rainwater to drain properly, which in turn result in waterlogging. And this waterlogging further, now because the water is entering into the soil particles, soil pores, further weakening the foundation. So this is basically a vicious cycle. The foundation on which this town was built was vulnerable. Its intermediary location, high disaster vulnerability, northeasterly sloping further increase the vulnerability of this foundation because of the continuous shaking. Further, humans have come over there and they have increased the pressure on these already vulnerable foundations. Poor drainage lines increasing the waterlogging phenomena, further weakening the foundation. So hence this becomes a vicious cycle, because of which, as a result, the land sunk in the Joshimath town. Now in this continuation, we should also see that what are the measures suggested to deal with this issue. So first and the foremost is controlling the infiltration of water, right? Obviously, we cannot do anything for the seismicity. We cannot do anything for the intermediate location or the natural sloping of that town. What we can do is that we can somehow tackle the anthropogenic activities mainly. So how it can be done? It can be done by building proper drainage systems, waterproofing, and use of barriers to prevent the groundwater or the rainwater from seeping into the unwanted areas. Similarly, the State Disaster Management Department also recommended that all the blasting activities should be stopped in the close vicinity of the disaster-prone zones like Himalayas. The third point is strict adherence to the National Building Code of India 2016, which ensures that the construction projects meet safety, structural and environmental standards. It covers various aspects of construction, including the design material, construction methods, occupancy requirements, etc. So basically, the building bylaws, building codes must be followed. A proper environmental impact assessment must be done before any project which has to be taken in that particular region. And the local communities, which are an important stakeholders, must be involved at every stage of planning, right? So these are certain suggested measures which you can write in your answers if at all it comes in the context of land subsidence of the Joshimath town. So this topic has appeared at page number 1 and its continuation has appeared at page number 10 in today's The Hindu Daily edition. And as you can read from the topic, it is related to the withdrawal of the monsoon season from India. And this is the very immediate context of this topic, that IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, has announced the withdrawal of the southwestern monsoon from India. And the map which has been released for this year by the IMD, you can very well see over here, withdrawal of the southwestern monsoon in 2023. And the withdrawal of southwestern monsoon has been declared by the IMD on which date? 26 September. Now, is this date important for the examinations perspective? No, this date is not important. What is more important is that you should be knowing the dates of the onset as well as the withdrawal of the monsoon. Now, why this is important? This is important because we all know that climate change is hampering the Indian monsoon also in terms of its spatial variability as well as the temporal sense. So that is, the monsoon is varying its behavior, is changing its behavior in temporal as well as the spatial manner. So when we have to talk about the changing in the temporal aspects of Indian monsoon, what will you tell? You will tell about the timeline, that is the months as well as the dates, right? So now the important thing for you people is that just see the dates of the withdrawal of the monsoon given in the NCERT. So those dates are the normal, the static concepts, but because of climate change, certain dates have been shifted. So it has been witnessed that because of the climate change, there has been a delayed impact on the Indian monsoon. So that means that Indian monsoon has been delayed in terms of onset as well as withdrawal. So this year, 26 September is the withdrawal of monsoon. Now if you closely see this particular map, again dates are not very important, but just visualize the trend which is taking place. The first and the foremost withdrawal, that is the 17th September on general, is from the westernmost part of the India, that is the western Rajasthan. As it progresses, there is a increase in date. For example, this is the 20th September. So after 3 days, it comes to the central Rajasthan. Then by 25th September, it moves to the easternmost Rajasthan as well as Gujarat. When you come to the eastern India, this part, West Bengal, it is around 10th October. Then from peninsular India, the monsoon is withdrawing by 15th October, right? So as we are moving from north to south, we are experiencing that the dates are increasing from September to October, right? So that is why this is happening. To answer this particular thing, we need to revise the static concept of the retreat of the monsoon, right? So therefore now we will be dealing with the static aspects of the monsoon withdrawal or the monsoon retreat. But to understand the monsoon retreat, we need to understand the onset of monsoon. So suppose this is the rough diagram, rough map of India, and Tropic of Cancer is somewhat roughly passing through this particular region, right? So this is the line of Tropic of Cancer. So what happens during the monsoon months, that is June, July, August and September. So as soon as we enter into June, what is the position of ITCZ? We know what is ITCZ. It is basically the intertropical convergence zone, and ITCZ shifts its position in the northern as well as the southern hemisphere with the shifts in the apparent movement of the sun. So we all are aware that sun apparently moves between the Tropic of Cancer to the Tropic of Capricorn. Suppose let us say that this is the equator, 0° latitude, right? And below this we have Tropic of Capricorn. So as soon as we enter into the months of May and June, the sun shines vertically over Tropic of Cancer. And that is why there is a shift of position of ITCZ also from south to north. So that is why during these months the ITCZ, that is the intertropical convergence zone, is somewhat lying over the Gangetic plains. That means that the low pressure area of ITCZ is now on the northern Indian part, that is the Gangetic plains, and that is why it attracts the wind from the southern hemisphere in the form of southwesterly monsoon towards the northern India. So IMD says that June, July, August as well as September, these 4 months are the monsoonal months for India, right? So we know why this is happening, because of the shift of the ITCZ from south to north, and hence this low pressure attracts the winds from the Arabian Sea. These winds carry moisture along with them. There are 2 branches of the monsoon. One is the Arabian Sea branch, right? And second is the Bay of Bengal branch. So that is why the winds are moving like this, hitting the Western Ghats and then entering into the Indian mainland. The Bay of Bengal branch, after covering the Bay of Bengal's region and taking the moisture, are obstructed by the Arakan Yoma, and then they get deflected towards the Indian mainland, that is the northern India. So this particular region experiences Bay of Bengal branch, and this particular region experiences Arabian Sea branch, and this is the region which experiences both the branches. So this is somewhat the brief explanation of the arrival of the Indian monsoon. Yes, there are other factors also, for example, role of Tibetan plateau, role of jet streams, role of Himalayas, etc. But obviously we are not discussing it, because in today's session we are going to learn about the monsoon withdrawal, in which the role of ITCZ, its position is very important, right? So if we have understood that how the northward shift of the ITCZ attracts the winds from sea towards the land, we can now understand the monsoon retreat. So again, with the help of this hand-drawn map, we will try to understand the phenomena. Now come to the months of September, October and November. During these months, we understand that the sun will be moving from north to south, that is from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, which means that there will be a shift of ITCZ, the low pressure region, intertropical convergence zone, also from north to south. So this shift again is very gradual. For example, in the month of September, this ITCZ is somewhat in this particular region. right? When it comes to the October, this is somewhat in this region. Then in November, it is somewhat in this region. So there is a gradual shift from north to south, right? Also, with the coming of the months of late September, October, and November, we know that the winter starts to arrive. Obviously, not very chilled winters, but the temperatures which you will be experiencing in the second half of September will be significantly lower than the temperatures which you experienced during the months of May, June, and July, right? So this relative reduction of temperature, what will it do? This relative reduction in the temperature will increase the pressure, relative pressure in this particular regions, right? And the ITCZ, which is the low pressure region, is basically shifting downwards. So now let us imagine that this particular region is a high pressure region and this region is the low pressure region. So now how the winds will be moving? Winds move from high to low, right? And because ITCZ has shifted to the southward, the sun has shifted to the southern hemisphere. That means that this tropical area, that is the Tropic of Cancer, these regions are experiencing which type of winds? Northeasterly trade winds, right? Northeasterly trade winds. So these northeasterly trade winds, what will it do? It will be moving in this direction, right? In Arabian Sea, it will be moving in this direction. So if you closely analyze this particular region, that is the Western Ghats, this region is experiencing offshore winds, right? So that means during these months, this particular region will be dry because winds are moving from land towards the sea and hence they are not having the moisture to hit the land. So there will be no rainfall. But on the other hand, if you see the Bay of Bengal region and the eastern coast of India, the winds which are blowing over the Bay of Bengal are carrying the moisture from this particular region and they are onshore winds as far as the eastern coast of India is concerned, and hence this particular region experiences rainfall during these months. So this is one important weather impact of the retreating monsoon on the distribution of precipitation over the India. One. Second important weather impact is, now because this region is experiencing relatively higher pressure. So what do we understand by higher pressure? Here, the sky will be cloudless or cloudy. Think about it. Because we are experiencing high pressure, that means we are experiencing atmospheric stable condition, which means we are experiencing anticyclonic conditions over this region. Also, during this particular period, the winds from the Central Asia are also approaching towards the northwestern part of India, intensifying this high pressure region, right? So if we are experiencing this stable anticyclonic condition, we will be having the cloudless sky. So now if the sky is cloudless, it basically means that now the solar rays will be coming to the India without obstructions because now we are not having the clouds over here, and also the radiation will be going back also unobstructed, right? But because the solar rays are coming without any obstruction, temporarily what does it do? It increases the temperature, right? So for a short period in the month of October, there is an increase in temperature, there is an increase in heat, right? Also, if in certain areas the winds are still having moisture, for example in late September and October, during these months there is slight availability of moisture with the wind. So that means there will be a humidity also, right? But because the region is experiencing relatively higher pressure, there is no precipitation. So now just imagine the weather of this particular period during the month of October. Higher temperature, higher heat, high humidity, no precipitation. So you are experiencing high humidity and high heat without precipitation. So don't you think that it will be a very oppressive weather? So this phenomena, that is during the month of October, which is marked by these weather characteristics, is known as the October heat. Right? So this is the second most important weather impact of the monsoon withdrawal or the monsoon retreat. If certain regions experience light precipitation in this particular period, then that precipitation is very beneficial for the crops like wheat, right? But basically, the overall concept or the overall phenomena of the monsoon retreat or the monsoon withdrawal is this. So, suppose if you get the question that you have to explain the phenomena of monsoon withdrawal or the retreat, and you also need to write about its significance. This significance can be in terms of the distribution of precipitation over the eastern coast. It can be related to the atmospheric stable conditions in the northern India. It can be related to the high pressure region being formed over the northwestern India, which also experiences the cold winds coming from the Central Asian region. The significance can also range to the importance for the agriculture, and further you can think about more important points as far as is concerned. So if you are asked this particular question, do you think that you will be able to answer it? Because we have discussed the concept of the arrival as well as the withdrawal of the Indian monsoon in the context of the shifting positions of the intertropical convergence zone, shifts in the apparent movement of the sun, and how it has multiple impacts on various regions of India. Right? So this was all about the topic monsoon withdrawal, which appeared in today's The Hindu newspaper. This topic has appeared at text and the context page. The topic is in relation to the new education policy and the findings of the parliamentary panel on the same. So this is the very immediate context also of this topic. As far as the UPSC scheme of syllabus is concerned, this topic finds its relevance in General Studies Mains Paper 2 in this section of social justice, because there we have education as an explicit component. So let us discuss that what are the key findings of the new education policy. Now this topic will help you to get the fodder material in order to reform the higher education system also, right? So question can be in the form of the challenges or the solutions to reform our higher education systems. So the immediate context is that recently the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Education headed by Vivek Thakur, now this is an important name in this regard, tabled a report during the session of Parliament on the implementation of the National Education Policy 2020. And these were certain issues and challenges which were the point of discussions of this panel. So that is why whenever you are writing about the implementation of the National Education Policy or the New Education Policy 2020, you can come up with such challenges which still persist in India's higher education ecosystem. What are these challenges? These challenges are: one, the rigid separation of disciplines. For example, when we enter into the engineering institutions, there we feel that there is a complete detachment between the engineering subjects as well as the humanities subjects. So that is why what happens is that we produce good engineers, but they are not aware about their fundamental rights and duties even. Similarly, on the other hand, the colleges which are having the humanities as their subject, they gain a huge theoretical knowledge in geography, history, economy, polity, etc. But they are devoid of any practical skills which are very relevant in today's time. So that is why it has been witnessed that there is a rigid separation of disciplines. The second issue is related to the limited access to the higher education in socio-economically disadvantaged areas. So there is a clear distinction which you can also see. Most of the higher education institutions are concentrated in the urban centers. As soon as you move from the urban to the rural areas, there one is very less number of higher education institutions. Two, whichever colleges or universities are present in the rural areas, you all are aware about their real situations. Do we have adequate teachers there? Do those teachers possess adequate skills? Is the infrastructure of that college or university sufficient? Is that college or university providing any skills which are required in present day times? Are they offering any placements? Are they having ties with the MNCs? All these are the issues. Next is that lack of higher education institutions that teach in the local languages. Again, a very huge problem. It is still So there is still a significantly a large proportion of the students who are coming from the state boards doing their 10th and 12th class from the regional language mediums. So as soon as they enter into HEIS, they are forced to transform themselves or convert themselves into the English medium, which obviously hamper their learning activities as well as their outcome. Then the limited number of faculty, lack of institutional autonomy. Now this is also an important. Institutions are still not allowed to design their own syllabus, when to conduct the exams, what will be their pattern. So still there is an lack of institutional autonomy. Even for the funding purposes also they have to depend on the government sources. Then is less emphasis on research, ineffective regulatory system as well as lower standards of undergraduate education, that is the outcome. Again, taking the example of the engineering colleges, we all are aware about the fact and several reports have been published that the engineers which we are producing, they are devoid of the necessary skills. After spending 4 years in the engineering college, still our engineers do not have the skills which can directly be implemented on ground. Most of the professional learnings which they get is from the training which they get after joining any particular company, right? So these are certain issues which are still plaguing the higher education ecosystem of India, and such issues you can directly write in your mains answer as well. As far as the important findings of the report is concerned, there are two important findings. One is that the central higher education institutions are limited. 70% of the total universities in India are listed under the State Act, and 94% of all the students are either in state institutions or the private institutions, not the central government institutions. The second important finding of this report is that the MEME system, which is much talked about, that is the multiple entry and multiple exit system, is a challenging task. So first we will look at what are the recommendations of this panel. One is the comprehensive awareness campaigns and infrastructural development must be there. Again, as we have discussed that this topic is mainly to provide you fodder material which you can write as it is while discussing the issues related to higher education institutions, right? So the first point is awareness campaign, for example in socially and educationally backward communities, areas, etc., as well as proper infrastructure development like labs, infrastructure related to research and development, classrooms, smart boards, etc. And for this, there should be a proper assessment of the technological infrastructure as well. In line with this, there should be a proper regular training of the teachers, because the capacity of the teachers is one of the biggest roadblock when it comes to the students' learning outcomes after their graduation. Then there should be a continuous scholarship and financial support in order to encourage especially those students who are socially as well as economically backward. So this scholarship and financial support can encourage the parents of these children to enroll their students in higher education institutions, because again it has been witnessed, especially in the rural areas, that there are very high dropout rates after the children have completed their 12th standard. So they are not enrolled in the higher education institutions, and this is especially true for the girl child. Next recommendation is that a proper focus should be there to increase the community engagement, which can be by the local stakeholders, NGOs, civil society organizations, in order to encourage the marginalized sections and to include them within the whole ecosystem of the higher education. Similarly, admission process and curriculum must be inclusive. There can be certain reservations based on certain areas, or the reservations which are still there, they should be implemented effectively. The benefits of reservation should go to those people who really need it, right? Similarly, focusing on the learning outcomes can increase the employability potential. Regional languages must also be promoted in degree courses. There can be bilingual courses. The medium of instructions can be bilingual as well as can be there in regional languages also. And at least one multidisciplinary HEI should be established in every district by 2030. Further, the Parliamentary Committee also says that the gross enrollment ratio (GER) should increase to 50% by 2030. Presently, it is somewhat around 26.5%. And last and the important related to the financial autonomy, the committee has said that the HEFA, that is Higher Education Financing Agency, must diversify its funding sources. They should not only be dependent on the government allocations, but they should explore partnerships with the private sector organizations, philanthropic foundations, as well as international financial institutions. So these are certain important recommendations of the parliamentary panel on the new education policy. However, you can use these issues as well as recommendations in your answers related to HEIs. So this was a pretty easy topic. And that is all for today. All the very best and study hard.